Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Piero, and I'm the director of the Visiting Artists Program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I am delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's program featuring a lecture by visiting artist Katie Paterson. We are so thrilled to have Katie join us from her home and studio in Fife, Scotland, and I would like to thank her for taking the time to share her important work with us today. SAIC's Visiting Artists Program hosts a variety of public talks by internationally recognized artists, designers, and scholars each academic year to expand our thinking about contemporary art and culture. In addition to public programs, our guests meet with SAIC students through various engagements, and we look forward to welcoming Katie back tomorrow for a discussion with our graduate students. You may find more information about the Visiting Artists Program by visiting our website at saic.edu/VAP. I would like to invite you to join us again on October 5th when we welcome acclaimed writer Amitav Ghosh for a reading and talk. You may find more information about that program on our website. Just a couple of notes about the format for today's program before we get started. After Katie's presentation, she'll be joined by Professor Mary Jane Jacob to answer a few questions from the audience. To pose a question, simply post it to the Q&A box below, and we will take as many questions as time allows. Instructions will also be shared via the chat window from our staff. We also have closed captions available by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So now to introduce Katie, it is my pleasure to welcome Mary Jane Jacob, professor in SAIC's Department of Sculpture and director of the Institute for Curatorial Research and Practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you all staff who are behind the scenes making today possible. It's a great pleasure to introduce Katie Paterson. Katie is a chronicler, suggesting a calendar dated to the year the sun will die, and a fireworks display recreating every comet in history. She is a sculptor too, imagining statues cast from bones of extinct life forms and an urn built to house the ashes of future Earth. She crafts images of the world like no landscape architect we know. A beach made from sand from hourglasses, or a mountain carried away stone by stone. And she is a poet, with ideas such as a book that can only be read in moonlight, and a forest of unread books growing for a century. All these works are contained in her book of ideas, and some have become actual. So Katie Paterson is at once a romantic and a realist. While her media are of and beyond this world, like all artists of all time, she employs beauty to bring us to our senses. Born in Scotland in 1981, to where she returned a few years ago, she studied in London at the Slade School of Art, but it was not in the art rooms where her education took place, but in the adjacent rock and science physics lab. Paterson's exhibitions since graduating in 2007 have been extensive, and I won't list them here for you, but to also say that, as we will hear, her commissions have been mounting and her success in the art world. So we thank her for taking time to be with us during this period of great intensity in her career, which is also a time of great urgency in the universe. And now, as you will hear, that is our meeting ground for today's lecture. Thank you, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much, Mary Jane. That was the loveliest introduction. And thank you so much for being here, everybody. I'm going to share the screen first. Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot to press a button. Let me share it again with the audio share set. Here we go. Okay. So I'm Katie. I live and work in Scotland, in Fife, and all my ideas for artworks are inspired by my fascination and awe with our universe, stars, the sun and moon, light and time. Today, I'm going to focus on trees, time and ecology, but first give an overview of my work. I often get asked as an artist, what is your medium? It's tricky because my medium is making ideas. As a student, I would bring scraps of paper to my seminar scribbled on. I have another big idea about how can I make it happen. With little money and reducing ambitions, I took off to live in Iceland, where I worked as a chambermaid in the remote north. I was sitting in a cupboard in Reykjavik when I learned that it was possible to send messages to the moon. I was scribbling through pages of lunar information and came across the technology Earth, Moon, Earth, which allows messages to be sent to the moon and back, fragmented by space and distance. Later, walking under a full moon, I imagined what messages I might transmit there myself. My interest in astronomy was not a childhood obsession, it crept up in me. It's not surprising that this encounter happened in a landscape of geological wonders, midnight suns and 24-hour daylight. The simple yet striking realization that this is a planet, one of billions of others, happened to me in Iceland over a decade ago. My eyes opened to the surrounding nature. The midnight sun, exploding geysers, volcanic strata, and the all-enveloping light and space. In Iceland, time is inscribed in place and distance becomes clearer. I experienced a powerful connection to the living world beyond humans, and it was here that I chose the path of an artist. Einstein once said, there are two ways to live your life, as if nothing is a miracle or as if everything is a miracle. When I returned to my studies in London, I wanted to follow this ethos. I created my first artwork, a phone line in a glacier. People all over the world could call and listen live to the sound of an Icelandic glacier melting at the other end of the line. The artwork was an elegy to disappearing landscape, collapsing space, time, and distance at an intimate, quiet, and slow experience. My concern with what lies beyond manifested itself as a keen interest in astronomy. The strata in the rocks in Iceland provided the link to deep time that I later found in distant stars. Time runs through everything I make. A short phone call to a glacier to the centuries of its demise, to the millions of years that the light from a dying star takes to pass through space before it reaches our eyes. Why I'm drawn to time is hard to describe. It's to do with being outside of myself and being inside a more universal network where distance and time might not even necessarily exist. To me, space, time, and light are material just as any other. After a residency at UCL's astrophysics group, I had a vision to map all the dead stars in existence. The result is a graveyard of stars, over 27,000 pinpoints etched in aluminium. The artwork speaks of interconnection, belongings, and our origins. Together with a global group of astronomers, we mapped every occurrence of a long-gone star across the universe: supernova, stellar black holes, gamma ray bursts. I learned that every atom in our bodies, the calcium in our bones, the carbon in our genes, the iron in our blood, and even the gold in our fillings, was created in a star millions and billions of years ago. This was revelatory. How something so distant and beyond us can in fact be so deeply connected to our human experience. I made Earth, Moon, Earth in 2007. We transmitted Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata to a receiver in Sweden via the moon. The music fractured when it bounced off the moon's craterous surface. It returned with gaps, absences, intervals, and rests. The moon's signature encoded into the piano music. This altered piece wafts out of an automated grand piano, a ghostly presence in the gallery space. Since then, I've made light bulbs that recreate the luminosity of a full moon, written letters to proclaim the death of stars, created a disco ball that reflects over 10,000 solar eclipses, and melted a meteorite which got sent aboard the International Space Station. I mapped the colors of the universe from its very beginnings to its potential end. We discovered the pale blue hues of the first ever stars to the dark maroons of the last light. I believe in blending disciplines, sharing knowledge and creativity, and have co-created my artworks with lighting engineers, geographers, geologists, perfumers, biochemists, clockmakers, and foresters from global communities. My time horizons were expanding, and I wanted to expand those of the viewer too. I have a thirst for the unseen, the unknown. The depth of time and space provides a link to vastness, a reciprocal encounter with the beyond that I find nourishing and imaginative. Now I've learned that time is inscribed everywhere. My journey in astronomy has been a search for connection, understanding that we're not separate from the universe, but we're intricately linked. I loved working on Fossil Necklace. It was a journey through Earth's history. Each bead on this necklace was individually carved from fossils and strung epoch by epoch, from the Precambrian to the Holocene. The beads chart major moments in Earth's history: the first single-celled life, the first flowers to flower, the first colors in Earth, the roots of the earliest trees, and even amber from the forests where humans diverged from chimpanzees. To my amazement, the beads are like worlds, spirals, the red planet, even a miniature Earth. This circular artwork spanned billions of years, and we joined the story in very recent times. From there, I created sand pails, buckets, and spades in the form of the world's mountains, which were built across beaches and washed away by the tide. Made from biodegradable material, this artwork left no trace. As Patrick Barkman wrote about the piece, an expanse of sand is the most eternal of landscapes and the most changeable. As we build our mountains, we remember that our labors are ephemeral, our lives are short, and everything must change. Much to my amazement, earlier this year, I was invited to create an artwork for Apple for their headquarters in Silicon Valley. I had a clear vision to bring together sand from every desert across the earth and make it into glass. I wanted to create a looking glass through all of time and space. The desert has inspired awe for millennia. 1/3 of the planet is sand. From early childhood, we understand that sand marks time. We're collecting sand from across 55 of the world's deserts and melting it into glass. The artwork, created with design team Zeller and Moye, blends art, architecture, science, and nature. This is Mirage. It'll be made from more than 400 pure cast glass columns in a dune-like form. The arrangement of the columns will move from desert to desert, east to west, across the world from Apple Park. The pillars connect earth and sky. Visitors will be able to move through mountainous deserts, subtropical, coastal, and rain-shadowed deserts, even volcanic, polar, and fossilized deserts stretching back millions of years. Innovative methods of working with glass at this scale will be used, and we're creating unique recipes of glass combining each desert composition. Trees and grass will grow inside the pavilion, creating an interior garden. Visitors can interact with the artwork, walking alongside and through it. Inside, they'll gaze into deep time and space through each of these distant epochs and places. The material of time literally fused together, millions of years merged. The glass sculpture will fade in and out of view, melting into its environment. In the daylight, the sculpture will iridesce, and in the evening, it will gently glow. From here, we're going to turn from sand grains to trees. It was always a dream of mine to go to Japan. As an art student, I won a travel grant to go to Yakushima Island, to one of the world's most ancient forests. It was simply breathtaking. Time stood still, and I learned there are more life forms in a handful of forest soil than there are people on the planet. Trees, like space, became a continuing source of wonder. I had the idea to create an artwork that brought together every tree species on Earth. I wanted to make a miniature forest of all forests. Years later, I was actually able to do so as a permanent outdoor piece for Bristol University's Life Sciences. I approached now long-term collaborators Zeller and Moyi to transform this idea into an inviting, immersive form. We imagined creating a pavilion-like structure made purely of wood that referenced rock strata, crystalline caves, the hollow of a tree, and Zen gardens, the miniaturization of a landscape in one form. We went on to collect wood samples from every country on Earth, from xylariums, wood libraries, arboretums, and botanical gardens, from the Indian banyan, the white mulberry, and the wild olive, to the monkey puzzle tree, the dawn redwood. Each individual piece has its own clear identity within the whole. We designed a block stack structure that references the forest canopy ecosystem. And this is hollow. The outside posts are like heavy tree trunks, and the interior is as if stepping inside the hollow of a tree. Hollow brings together over 10,000 tree species spanning millions of years to form a meditative space which tells the evolutionary story of our planet. Dense clusters of wood, twig that I collect from the floor of sacred spaces, to a sample of Methuselah, the oldest living tree on Earth, surround the viewer. We wanted to create a feeling of being immersed, an invitation to slow down. The scents of the wood are transporting, and the colors and the textures are vibrant. It's tactile, contemplative, and inviting. Looking upwards into the light, we see the most threatened tree species of now. Zeller, Moy, and I hope Hollow creates a sensation of being inside an almost infinite microcosmos of trees, as if every forest has collapsed into one. There's a saying that the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. A decade ago, I was daydreaming on a train and drawing tree rings. In an instant, I saw a forest growing a book, words enmeshed in tree pulp. I imagined writers' thoughts infusing themselves, becoming trees. Tree rings became chapters spaced out over the years to come. In that moment, notions of time, growth, future place, stories, pulp, matter, cells, and smells all collapsed into one. But I put that idea in my pocket, an artwork that folds over 100 years, How could that possibly come to life? But some years later, I was invited to Oslo. I spent some time in the Norwegian woods listening to the trees. And then I proposed, Anna Beata, I want to grow a forest. It will grow for 100 years and then it will become a book. It'll only be read by people who are not born yet. And there'll be an author for every year for a century who will write a text that will get printed on these trees. Can you imagine? That was my dream. And somehow the adventurous Oslo commissioner said, why not? So with support from hundreds of people, civic bodies, sponsors, and even the King and Queen of Norway, I'm building a library which will contain books made with these trees. They'll only see the light of day in 100 years. This is Future Library. In 2014, we planted 1,000 baby spruce trees that should create 3,000 anthologies of books in the year 2114. I'd moved from working with billions and millions of years to just 100 years. A century, however, is just beyond our lifetimes. We can almost touch it, and it's confronting. Norway felt like the perfect place for Future Library to exist and grow. The Future Library forest is close to the city, yet it has no city sounds. The process of planting trees was completely magical. This forest feels so timeless, it could be 100, 1,000, even 1,000,000 years old. Will this forest be unchanged in 100 years' time? Will there be printed books? What will the status of the written word be? Planning Future Library has been a challenge in many ways, from the consideration of tree types, Norwegian insects and climate, to working with lawyers on 100-year contracts. Trust is a dominant concept throughout. Support has been given by the City of Oslo, and we're working together to ensure the protection of the forest and the manuscripts till 2114. We're inviting 100 authors to each write a text of any content, any language, and any number of words. They're being selected for their outstanding contribution to literature or poetry, and for their work's ability to capture the imagination of this and future generations. So how do we go about the author selection process? We've formed a Future Library Trust, whose paramount objective is to compassionately sustain the artwork for its 100+ year duration. It was the allure of the forest that secured our first author. She had the imagination and trust to take what was a leap in the dark, Margaret Atwood. We all remember where we were when she said yes to our invitation. The project was actually going to happen. And now the family tree is growing. People have started to say, something's going on in Norway that involves the greatest writers of our generation. David Mitchell, Sean, Elif Shafak, Han Kang, Karl Ove Knausberg, and Ocean Vuong have all contributed. Tsitsi Tangarembwa is writing as we speak. Now, Future Library, it's more than I could have ever dreamed of. It's an artwork that belongs not only to us and the City of Oslo now, but to those who are not yet born. Margaret Atwood said it's an act of optimism. It's a hopeful project. She says Future Library will contain fragments of lives that were once lived, that are now in the past. But all writing is a method of preserving and transmitting the human voice. The marks of the writing, like the marks in a musical score, lie inert until a reader arrives to bring the voice back to life. Why does the project resonate? It offers rituals. We gather in the forest every spring and the author hands over their manuscript, announcing its title. The ceremony is simple and grounded. The foresters speak about the spruce trees, they serve coffee around a fire, and we all bring our mats to sit on. We've had a golden harp in the forest, a choir, and a Norwegian kulak singer. We walk in the footsteps of authors past and yet to come. David Mitchell said, the whole thing is a kind of poem written in words, but also in trees and in people. Sean asks, will there be people in the future who even understand the language I write in? Ella Shafak describes the project as a secular form of faith. Without a word, Han Kang dragged a white cloth through the Norwegian forest, silently wrapping her manuscript in it. She said, carrying my cloth here, it was like a wedding of my manuscript with this forest, or a lullaby for a century-long sleep. How does the artwork take risks? It unfolds at the pace of tree growth, with the changing seasons not to an exhibition timetable. These time spans are not new for us, but perhaps lost or forgotten. The materiality of trees as paper as books has always been at the core of the artwork. A world of objects around us are made of trees. I see libraries as forests and vice versa. All the manuscripts for the books have to be stored with the utmost care. One day they'll be held here in the new Dijkmans Library in Oslo. We were given a room there. The architects, Lynn Hagen, Atelier Oslo, and I built it out of wood we cut before we planted the future library forest. And it is magical. The room is organized in 100 layers, and it's like stepping inside a tree. The authors' names and the titles of their texts shine through the handmade cast glass drawers. I feel a direct bond with these little trees as I live my life alongside them. In one handover ceremony, I was pregnant. My son Emery is now 4 years old. By the time he is my age, our world is likely to have changed beyond recognition. I often get asked, how does it feel to create an artwork which will come to fruition after I'm gone? I see a world where no one I love exists anymore, and in that world, the trees in Norway still exist. It's uncomfortable to confront our mortality and the mortality of all those we hold dear. What is quite unbearable to consider is the fate of unborn people whose future we hold the key to. In just a few years, I'm asked about future. The questions I'm asked have changed radically. What will the printed book be like in 100 years? Will human beings even exist to read the book? That's completely shocking. Andre Snare Magnusson writes, over the next 100 years, there will be foundational changes in the nature of water on our Earth. Glaciers will melt away. Ocean levels will rise. Increasing global temperatures will lead to drought and floods. The oceans will acidify to a degree not seen for 50 million years. All of this will happen during the lifetime of a child who's born today. Such speed is mythological. It affects everyone we know and everyone we love. I want to pause for a moment and share this moment from Sean's handover ceremony in Norway.
The title is 7, As I Brush My Brow on the Tunics of Angels, or The Drop Tower, the Roller Coaster, the Whirling Cups, and other instruments of worship from the late industrial age.
We invite you all to come to the forest if you can make it. Writer Lisa Lefrouve described her experience of journeying to the Future Library forest. There had been no artwork to point to, nothing to look at, nothing to measure, nothing to chart. I like my art historical facts. I like dates and weights and lengths and widths and provenances and exhibition histories. There was none of this, and there will be none of this for Future Library. Instead, on this one day, I came across a proposal of ideas, an invitation to inhabit something to come. I'm still in the time of Future Library. To the reader of this welcome, you're inside too, and you will not leave until your day's end. Future Library is a century-long prayer. It questions the present tendency to think in short bursts of time, making decisions only for us living now. It leaves a gift for unborn generations, a book written now, which will be opened when all of us are gone. It's a small offering, but I wanted to say to these future readers, I see you, we see you. Future Library invites us to slow down, to expand our time horizons and envisage a longer now. It builds a bridge between now and the future, and it offers hope. Increasingly, my artwork deals with the crisis of the sixth extinction that we're living through. It asks, how can we connect more deeply with the living world around us, and how can we engage in deep time? How can we stretch our imaginations to build new visions? My current body of artworks are laments, requiems. This new project, very much in progress, will depict every extinct flowering plant brought together in a textile work which will be reflective of and inspired by the arts and crafts movement. The arts and crafts movement was concerned with the importance of nature as inspiration and the value of simplicity, utility, and beauty. The wall hanging I'm creating will represent a reverence for nature and a mourning for all that is or soon to be lost. Me and my studio are working with leading scientists, naturalists, botanists, and herbariums, including Kew Gardens in London, to amass an image archive, collecting together all existing imagery from across the world and across centuries, photography, botanical illustrations, drawings and paintings, herbarium species, images of each and every flowering species that I've ever found to be extinct, which is over 350 species. A comprehensive list and image archive of all extinct plants does not yet exist, so the artwork is pushing the boundaries of scientific and creative research. We're happy to be working in collaboration with botanical illustrator Deborah Lampkin, who is creating unique drawings of each and every extinct plant interpreted from our archive. Graphic designer Fraser Mugaridge will manipulate these drawings and weave them together into the final design. The artwork takes inspiration from May Morris's amazing embroidery owl from 1905 to 6. I will match its dimensions of 83 to 61 inches, which is about the size of a double bedspread. The flowers, petals, buds, leaves, and stalks from the extinct plants will replace those in owl. The imprint of the flowing vines from owl is being incorporated as a blueprint for our design. The artwork will be hand embroidered in black or white by the Royal Needlework Society in the UK using silk and cotton thread on natural linen in a sustainable yarn in a traceable process. We share a quarter of our DNAs with plants. They are our life source. Plants set the foundation for nearly all life on Earth, yet the number of plants that disappear from the wild is more than twice the number of extinct birds, mammals, and amphibians combined. As Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, remember that the earth is a gift that we must pass on just as it came to us. When we forget, the dances we'll need will be for mourning, for the passing of the polar bears, the silence of the cranes, for the death of the rivers and the memory of snow. The artwork is commissioned by F15 Museum in Norway and will be beautifully partnered in my exhibition next year with To Burn Forest Fire. Have you ever wondered about the first ever trees to grow on Earth? What that environment might have looked like, even what it might have smelled like? Pondering this idea sparked To Burn Forest Fire, an artwork that explores the scent of the first and last forests through the creation of incense sticks. I collaborated with scientists to define and characterize these forests, the scents of which have been made into incense and currently burn across a variety of sites in the city of Helsinki. The project is live, commissioned by IME, and continues in Finland to the end of this week. The incense sticks are being burned in a variety of public locations, including the botanical gardens, the observatory, university lecture halls, and the Campi Chapel of Silence, as well as out of people's windows in the streets. The artwork employs the senses to cultivate an intimate and intuitive experience. Professor Emeritus Jan Zalewicz has been key to defining the first forest on Earth with us. It grew in modern-day Cairo, New York State, 385 million years ago, and was discovered through fossilized root systems containing 3 types of ancient plant species. What was this forest like? A shady place of greens and browns, probably with little other color. A quiet place, likely. Vertebrates didn't yet exist. The scent of the first forest is guided by basic elements of the Devonian environment, the soil, the plants, and their closest modern analogues, such as liverworts. Professor of Literature, Biology, and Environmental Research, David Haskell, has been involved in defining the scent descriptions with us. The incense stick recreates the scent of the entire landscape, the atmosphere of the first forest, the scent of its soil, water, and air from this ancient time. Fungi, ferns, seawater, stream water running through silty clay mud, a warm, rounded smell of rich humus and loam. These past and future environments have been translated into incense in collaboration with Japanese perfumers and incense maker Shoeido. They alerted me to Kodo, the Japanese art of incense listening, which dates back centuries. It's described as more than just an act of smelling, it's also about listening to what the incense is telling you by allowing the fragrance to envelop your senses. Instead of smelling the incense, we say listening to the incense. As perfumers say, there's top notes, base notes, and middle notes to the incense. There's a whole symphony of fragrance to listen to. We don't just smell the incense with our noses, but listen to the incense with our whole being. In the ceremonies in Helsinki, the incense sticks are simply burned one after the other with a bell rung in between. Like most of my artworks, it's modest. I titled it To Burn Forest Fire, which is a literal translation from the Japanese word incense. I'd like to invite you to imagine, what is the last forest on Earth? This question provides speculative answers. Most of all, it's very uncomfortable. We chose the Amazon rainforest. It's a forest whose destruction is widely understood. It's facing the worst deforestation in the world, and measures are needed urgently to prevent large-scale irreversible ecological catastrophe. Our ascent is based on a walk taken at the Tipitini Biodiversity Station in the Yasuni Biosphere Reserve in Ecuador. This part of the Amazon is said to be home to the highest density of species anywhere. It's so full of life, yet it's dying, and the Amazon could be lost within our lifetimes. I want participants to breathe in the majesty of this epic living forest, to feel inside what's at stake. We're often told that we only realize the true value of something when it goes missing from our lives. We are destroying rainforests so quickly they may be gone in 100 years. Author J. Griffiths wrote, "The silencing of the rainforests is a double deforestation, not only of trees, but a deforestation of the mind's music, medicine, and knowledge." Our world is living through a sixth extinction. We can feel it in our bones, and we are suffering. Humans are sensory beings. I believe the planet and the life it supports are deeply interconnected, and we can face up to the climate catastrophe more effectively if we connect on an emotional, intuitive level. As journalist Sana Liponen wrote, "To burn forest fire reminds us about the climate and extinction crisis in an unadorned and painful way, about how the Amazon rainforest burns and the species disappear. The extremely stripped down ceremony forces you to stay still, surrender to the surrounding silence, and observe your own senses and thoughts." For David Haskell, aroma is a powerful messenger. When we smell a forest, we sense that a tiny part of the forest is inside us, literally bound to the cell membranes in our noses. Aroma offers a direct connection from the substance of the forest via our senses to human memory and emotion. Aroma is a call to remember that we live in a relationship with the forest. This relationship has a narrative arc from the first to the last forests. We now have a choice. Will we bring about the premature end or diminishment of this long arc? We can choose some of the direction of the story. To summarize, my artworks aim to expand our time horizons, whether through astronomy, the strata of rocks, melting glaciers, tree rings, or the colors of the first stars. I seek to connect to the more than human world through my work. I believe, like Roman Krznarik, that the environment is not something out there, but we are the environment. We're connected to the landscape just as we are to future generations through the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the soil where we grow our food. I believe we must embrace timefulness as well as mindfulness and recognize that we're part of a continuum. We need creativity, radical imagination, and strong new narratives. If we envisage that future, we can change with it and redefine the path that we're on. Thank you very, very much for listening.
Thank you, Katie. I'm sorry we're not in the same room together, ourselves and all of those who have been listening today, both to kind of feel the presence of what you're talking about. We're all asked to talk in these vacuums, and yet you're dealing with something so close to all of us. About all of us, our nearly 250 folks who are with us today. And at the same time, we miss that incense. Thank
I
you.
know, if only we could be pumping it through the speakers.
If
to
only we
everybody
could
right
do
now.
that. We haven't gotten that far. We get far with certain things and go in opposite directions with others. But yeah, you've sort of led us on the one hand to this stunning vacuum that we are also creating for life, and almost feel like, you know, we all need to either take a deep breath or ponder in a certain requiem right now for, you know, what seems to be this inevitable death. So taking that deep breath, we're gonna launch into some questions and discussion, and some will be very direct, and others will take a bit of time to maybe explore. So so going back a bit to your first section where you were talking about works more quickly. Thank you for keeping to the time. Can you tell us again the architects or landscape architects, whichever they are, that you're collaborating with for that, which, if I caught it correctly, are the same as with the Bristol tree form? And maybe in addition to the name, just tell us a bit about these folks, because you work with a vast array of collaborators, from scientists to, in this case, other creative people who are working, and so we use that as one touchstone of a project, like all of these that involve other people. So if you would tell us about those folks that you have successfully collaborated with.
Yeah, thank you, happily. So Zeller and Moyi are architects, designers, artists as well. And we started working together with the Hollow, with the tree project. And the thing that I like doing is having ideas. And, you know, maybe it's, you know, that's at the core of what I do. But what I'm not very good at is visualizing these things as forms. No, I mean, sometimes, yes, it's just very obvious. The form of the artwork just takes exactly what the idea is. But in other cases, you know, there's so many ways that it could come to life. So in that instance, I've had the idea, you know, the microcosmos of trees and bringing together all the forests, but I really could not visualize what on earth that was. And so we got in touch, and I was really happy to be put in touch with Zeller and Moyi. They'd worked on one of the Serpentine pavilions. They'd worked with Sana, the Japanese architects, and on the Tate extension, amongst other things. And they have a very kind of minimalistic approach and a very kind of sensitivity to materials. And they've also worked on social projects and, you know, a whole range of things. So we clicked very, very quickly. And I think that's really important, because with many of the projects where I collaborate with scientists and others, it's often kind of drawing their expertise in, but it's not really the aesthetic side of it. And so this is the first kind of collaboration where we've really worked from the ground upwards on the form and the whole experience of the artwork. So it just went so well with Hollow that when the Apple Commission came up, again, I'd had this sort of image of sands, desert sands and glass, and bringing together the entirety of all the deserts. But yeah, what on earth is that going to look like? And there were so many things kind of spinning around my head of what that could look like. But we were able to visualize it together, and through a really kind of lengthy and involved design process, we came to what looks like a very simple form, but it's been through, you know, kind of many stages. And in the end, we came to something that feels, you only see the glass, you know, and it becomes like a kind of mirage as you walk around and through it, and the colors change in the light. So there's that side of it. And then there's also like the very practical side that, you know, I have ideas and I am not in any way trained in architectural, you know, landscape, anything like that. So it really needs the minds of somebody not only to imagine these forms, but imagine what's actually possible. And so I think the blending of us coming together is like a really nice way to do that.
Yeah, the practicalities which we need, but just briefly, because collaboration is so important, and and I won't drag you into the old authorship question. I'll hope that we're past that. Nobody's asking that.
You know what? Honestly, it's all shared. I mean, from my point of view, I'm so open.
Yes. But I just want to come back to one word you said, because there's a chemistry, and succinctly, but could you pause or return to that word click? You just clicked. I think there's more there.
You know, I feel extremely lucky because I've just clicked with a number of people in my life, but it doesn't happen where it's so perfectly aligned, you know, and to have chemistry with somebody from the outset is very, very special. And that's happened, you know, with Zeller and Moy, and it's also happened with many of the scientists that we work with, where, you know, and Jan Zalovich, who's been working on the incense, where we've got to a point that, you know, it's almost like, well, we're friends to start with, which is nice. We know each other, and we kind of don't even need to explain certain things anymore. And I think that's a big jump, you know, when you reach a kind of point in a relationship where everybody's clicking and just, you know, on the same lines. And that's not to say that every project we should be thinking in the same way, quite the opposite. But it's just kind of bringing something into a relationship that, you know, you can trust with each other and then thrive from it.
We'll move on, but on this topic of collaboration, all your projects involve so much collaboration and social engagement. Do you see the social side of your practice to extend to the more than human? Or do you feel you're collaborating with the more than human, working in partnership with the land?
Well, I think you can't ever work with the land and the environment without having at least an awareness of everything else that lives within it. You know, like the land, it's not separate from everything that belongs there. And so I guess there's a few ways into that, where with works like Mirage, you know, we're being so careful that we're actually not altering the structure of the site in any way. The trees are staying, the life is staying. In fact, we're encouraging the growth and, you know, being very careful with their decisions. But in terms of like making a work that could be for the non-human world, I like that. And, you know, I was just thinking right now, I should burn the incense outdoors in certain and see how animals respond to it. Because, you know, it is basically creating a kind of environment. But what, you know, how would birds respond to it? How, you know, would something happen in their minds that would kind of trigger the early forests that they've come from?
And along the same lines, someone's asking about your sense of a bond with trees, especially. Now you chose to focus for us with trees, and that gave a kind of you know, intensity to this. And it's not the only thing you do, but is there a special bond with trees, and what does that mean to when we bond with human things, and can we directly communicate?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that trees are the most fundamental thing, you know, they allow us to breathe. And so I don't know if I have a particularly stronger kind of relationship than anybody else, but I just, you know, have the awareness deep within me now, after working on all these projects, that would be nothing without trees, you know. And then this kind of idea that we actually share a quarter of our DNA with trees, you know, they're our cousins. And so I can't help but feel some kind of affinity, and they just astound me all the time. You know, I don't know anything about the names of trees. I can't really tell what's what, but, you know, I just have a real appreciation of them, and being in really ancient forests is something, you know, just so special indeed. And so I guess it's there's not one particular moment, but you know, the forests have fed into so many things. And in my book of ideas, trees are, and you know, they're just running through all of it. So, and of course, I love, you know, literature about trees and so on.
So if we listen to the incense, which is a new idea to me and really riveting one, do you listen to trees, Katie, or do you talk to trees?
I actually don't talk to trees, but yeah, I listen to them, and I spend quite a lot of time trying to listen to them. But I don't know. I've never got over the kind of British embarrassment of just talking to a tree. But I'm very happy in their company, and maybe I communicate with them, but not with words.
Someone asked if the incense work is going to be exhibited or done in London too, by chance.
Yeah, well,
perhaps someone in London.
Yes, we're really hoping so. So we just launched the project, and in fact, it's live, you know, right now in Helsinki, just till the end of this week. It's been going on for a month, and so it was a new commission for IME. And when the commission comes to an end, we're going to be, you know, staging the events in other places. It's going to happen in Munich pretty soon. It's going to happen in Norway in my show next year. There's a number of discussions that are happening about London. I can't quite say right now, but it's potentially going to have a big London show. So yeah,
there's more incense happening.
There's more incense happening. And I should mention, on the last day of the events in Finland, which is Friday actually, after the ceremony in the Campi Chapel, we're giving away 100 sets so that people can burn them and create their own little ceremonies in their houses on the International Day of Forests, which is not till March, but we'll give them away, and then people can kind of come together, even if it's remote, and burn the incense together.
So there's a question around leaping off of this concept of forests and libraries as forests, of other ecological aspects of the world that you see in a similar way, or that you are also following that thread. I mean, you are doing this needlework work, which is plants. We might say that's, you know, an extension of the forest idea. But yes, other ecological questions, and there's, you know, some big ones that I think you've already touched on, in the sense of water, for instance.
Yes. Well, it's kind of always been there, but maybe in a whispering sort of a way. And, you know, right from the get-go, when I put a microphone inside a glacier, you know, the questions were, is this about the environment? And actually at the time I really resisted. I was, you know, still at art school at the time to start with. I felt like I hadn't been given enough time to kind of give voice to the other things that were coming. But actually, in hindsight, looking back, yes, you know, of course it's all been there. You know, you cannot work with nature and space and time and light without having a connection to ecology, because everything is so deeply connected. And so, yeah, I've worked with water, with the glaciers. You know, I even kind of think it's more abstract maybe, but works like clocks. I didn't show them here, but I made a series of clocks that tell the time on other planets. They all sort of relate to our position as humans on Earth and how we think about the rest of the universe. And to me, you know, the rest of the universe, it's also not separate from nature. It's the same thing. And our planet came from stars dying, you know, the Big Bang. In fact, the universe is this huge cosmic recycler. So like everything that exists within it is the same sort of material, just moving and changing, and the energy moves. So I think it's there.
Do you feel like you have to move ahead next with a next kind of agenda of a specific topic, or because of this interconnectedness that you will stay between things?
Well, I'll be completely just open and say I struggle, you know, because these issues are really heavy, you know, and I read so much about the environment, and and it's very, very hard to live with, to live on a day-to-day basis with. I have a young child. I'm super aware of the kind of life that possibly he's going to grow into, and there are alternatives. So, in some ways I can't avoid, the ideas I have are just all related right now to, extinction and loss, but also hope. And so I don't think it's a surprise that I kind of catapult a little bit between some of these works that are very much related to the earth and, disaster situations, but also works that involve the universe, because it brings in some kind of, I don't know, what's the word, like respite, or that larger relationship to everything. And that's not to diminish the ecological, catastrophe, not at all, more that it sort of helps us, or helps me position it in something that's sort of beyond the right now.
So do you feel that, or are you asked sometimes to do ecological remediation to be about solutions? And I hate to pit these against each other because I think they do work together, but solutions versus awareness. And one of our listeners asked, how can we use our skills as artists to impact the environment or bring attention to environmental issues, which is the awareness, but is it also to literally impact it and make change? But to which, again, I return to your statement a few minutes ago that these are heavy topics and not something that any one person has the magic answer, but you're the magic artist who can work with so many people. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been one to try to come up with solutions. I sort of feel like it's a little bit beyond my capacity. And there's so many incredible solutions out there that people are working on, and like Project Drawdown to start with is just, thousands of ideas of what we can do. In my role, it's, there's not anything that I personally feel that I can do other than make these works that communicate an idea and express something. And, if they have an impact, then that's fantastic. If they change just one person's view on something, if people come to the forest and they come away thinking slightly differently about those around them or the future, then I feel really happy with, what I've done. In terms of other artists and raising awareness, again, I think it's like, this is a responsibility for everyone on Earth, just about. It's something we can't avoid. It's something we need to deal with. And so I feel like as many people and voices that can come together to do whatever they can, the better.
And is that why some of your work has this mournful tone, or you're talking about it in terms of, what seems like an inevitable? You did mention, using our emotional intelligence. That seems to be a way you're connecting to audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, and for one, I've read so many of the books of the facts, and it can be totally devastating. But I feel like, the climate catastrophe, it's something that's very existential. It's something that goes to the core of what it is to be a human and to live amongst millions of other species. And humans right now are a geological force of, we've overtaken nature to a certain degree, and the changes that we've made, we've made changes to the air, to the ocean, to just about every, I was looking for some microplastic for another artwork, and I asked one of the scientists, which beach should I go to? They said, you can go to any beach, the microplastic has gone everywhere. And with something else, I'm collecting plastic from the deepest part of Earth, ocean, so it's everywhere, and it's seemingly hard. I find it more impactful for me personally if I can engage in a way that hits me in the heart a little bit more, because I think we need to, like, why are we not all so sad? Because we're losing species everywhere, and we are in a kind of situation that's completely immense and there's never been in the whole history of humankind. We're at this kind of precipice, and it's really hard, and it's very uncomfortable, and it's really like confronting. And so, yeah, I feel if I wanted to make real social change and real environmental change, I would go into that area. I'd work as an environmental scientist, I would be an engineer, I'd come up with solutions, but I don't. I just have creativity, so I try to use it, as I can, as a messenger.
We're going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions. And one is about the durability or sustainability of your materials. You're using natural materials. Now you're kind of evoking waste materials, reusing materials, recycling materials. You're also adding materials to the earth, sort of. I always think of art as one of the great polluters, but that is my curatorial perception sometimes, where it collides with quality and taste. But how do you feel about the materiality of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled with it. I think, at many points, all of us question, why are we making and adding anything else? There's so much there. What is the point? But then that brings a kind of apathy, and I've always tried to avoid that. In all honesty, in the past, 10 years ago, I was aware of things, but I didn't know how to do things, And yes, I was traveling to glaciers, I still do. I hold my hands up, I haven't lived in the most sustainable way. However, now, with the kind of raising awareness of things that we can do, we run a carbon neutral studio. Every artwork that I make goes through a kind of system now, whether that's like a group of people or kind of literally analyzing the footprint, or we're analyzing ourselves and finding ways to either offset, which clearly isn't like a solution, it's a sticking plaster, but it's something that we're just very aware of doing, where it feels like we can actually use the specific materials themselves, and then there's artworks like the buckets and spades that we used a biodegradable material, which literally the whole artwork at the end got composted and kind of disappeared. So, there's ways, and every time we print something now, we're really careful with what we print on, where we print it. And the EMA project with the incense literally tracked the project from its beginning to its end, and publishes the amount of carbon involved in the project. And so great, I
think you're doing a lot. Yeah. Living the work, living the consciousness.
I'm trying. Yeah.
So our last question, kind of a tough one, but it starts wonderfully from this person, which begins with beautiful work, exclamation point.
Thank you.
I think we can all echo that. How do you see your work changing as we move more virtual in the future? Or as we move more virtual, or as we move to extinction in the future?
Oof.
Anyway, take that as you will. But the question from others is about the more virtual. And
nice question.
Imagine now we've moved from materiality to immateriality.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're kind of in the virtual, let's face it, right this second, here we all are, and we're finding a way to present work, and it's not ideal. Of course, I would love to be sitting in the room and seeing all of you and looking into your eyes and feeling a kind of connection, but we're doing it. And I think, many of us have felt, especially during the COVID time, where we have been constrained to, our walls, our homes, the art is very important to, lift us out and transport us and, connect us to each other and connect us to something much wider and to time and so on. So, in a way, I don't think my work will change at all, really. I mean, yes, in a way, I would maybe adapt ways of showing it and so on. but I'm not at the point where I'm willing to really take, you know, the ideas that I have are just the ideas. In a way, I can't control what they are, you know, and so if something comes my way, like the incense, the idea to make the first and last forest, it was actually extremely lucky that we begun that project kind of before COVID, because it was something that was the opposite of digital. You know, it was like lighting an incense stick and breathing in the forest. And that was wonderful. And so if anything, you know, if we get more and more digital, maybe I'll just get more and more forest, you know, and I can kind of feel it happening already, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, Katie, this has been a fascinating time for us, for our noon hour, later for you there in Scotland.
Yeah,
And
just getting
thank you
back.
yet again for being with us. We've been together in other times, and we're happy to bring you into this circle of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So thank you so much, and thank you to all the people who joined us, stayed with us, and Andrea and Anja and staff that make this all possible for us. So round of
Thank you so
applause.
much. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Take care.